Beyond Education, in association with Enquiry Tracker, empowering schools to manage and grow inquiries and online enrolments.
Hello, I'm Britt Coles and welcome to Beyond Education, where we will be unpacking and examining the way we teach, listen and learn from primary education all the way through to university and beyond. Beyond Education is backed by Enquiry Tracker, who are the all-in-one solution for schools to easily manage their future families. Now, whilst Enquiry Tracker is the presenting sponsor of this program, the opinions and statements expressed in the following shows are our own. Joining me today is my regular co-host and founder of Enquiry Tracker, Greg Capitelli. Greg, such a pleasure as always to have you in our studio. Now, today's topic, super interesting, girls powering STEM. Now, we know, of course, that STEM stands for science, tech, engineering and maths. And there is, of course, a push for more women in STEM. But what more do we know about this, Greg?
This is a big one for me. I love it. I mean, getting more women into STEM is a personal passion of mine, and we're really passionate about it at Enquiry Tracker. We just know how important it is for schools to capture student interests early on, which our system can do. And then we know the importance that the schools play and the families play in ensuring that those interests are nurtured and grown over time and lead into their chosen career of endeavour. We know we need more women in careers that need more women in them. So yes, we're a big supporter of women in STEM, that's for sure.
And we've heard the word STEAM, not talking about steam trains here. I'm sure it's related to STEM. What more do we know here?
Yeah, it's the letter A. So it's crept into the STEM acronym. And the A, of course, stands for arts. And this is there's a school of thought that you think, why does it belong there? Well, it's a school of thought that it's more inclusive to bring those students in and get that creative thinking, that imagination, those design skills that can suddenly influence in the design portfolio or in the STEM portfolio.
And where are we in terms of participation, especially for women in STEM?
Well, it's low, but there has been improvements in the past couple of decades. And we've seen this shift that, men coming into employment that was once the domain of women, nursing, early childhood education, and conversely, women coming into those areas that now were once dominated by men, law, politics, medicine, for example, emergency services and the trades. We're starting to see greater representation. But let's break down some of the stats, because I know that you've got some and I've got some.
Yeah.
Let me share you with what's going on. I'm going to read off the screen here from the UK. When we look at the number of women in higher ed in STEM in the UK, only 35% are women, which means 65% are men. And when you break that down into the computer sciences and, say, engineering, which is so important, think about robotics and AI, the number drops down to 19%. It really plummets. It's about the same in Australia. When you look at the number of students enrolled in higher ed for STEM, it's about 36%. Pleasingly, that figure's increased by about 25% over the last 8 years. One more stat for you, about people once they go into the workforce, because it's all very well at higher ed, but what happens when they go in the workforce? Well, the US figures are it's 28% of people in STEM in the US workforce are women. So there's a long way to go. Now, you were at an international conference for International Women's Day in March this year, and you've got some amazing figures as well.
Yeah, so the theme this year was cracking the code, all about inclusive tech and, of course, increasing participation in STEM. And 1 in 10 women enroll in STEM courses compared to 1 in 5, and that's all going to the workforce. So if we do continue this, according to Industry Gov, that means it'll take 70 years to close the gap from females to males.
Yeah, it's too long.
Exactly right, and only 40% of women under 25 actually leave. They actually leave STEM jobs within the first 5 years of being in the workforce. So, of course, this all starts with education.
Great time to bring in our guest.
Absolutely. So today we have Associate Professor Jen Martin from the School of Bioscience at the University of Melbourne. Jen, what a pleasure to have you today. Just tell us a bit about what you do there.
Oh, look, thanks so much for inviting me. This is a topic that I care a lot about, so it's wonderful to be with you. I lead the science communication teacher at Melbourne Uni, so my job is to make sure that scientists are effective at sharing their work with different audiences and having impact in the world. So I'm always thinking about how science has such a big role to play in society. And of course, that means it's essential that we have women represented equally and fairly in STEM, in the STEM workforce.
So Jen, why are there still barriers to women in STEM? What's really stopping them here?
Look, I think it's complicated. I think there are lots of different barriers, and the statistics you've just shared show that there's a lot going on here. But unquestionably, there are systemic barriers that exist. There are unequal opportunities for women in STEM. There's terrible statistics on the pay gap. There are barriers to promotion and to leadership opportunities. And I think some of that comes from stereotypes that still persist. This idea that men are more suited to roles in STEM. And, we see that starting very early when you ask young children to draw us a firefighter or draw us a doctor or draw us a scientist. We know that those children tend to draw men rather than women. And there's the unconscious bias that absolutely can play out in the workplace as well. Things like gendered language in job descriptions and, quite discriminatory hiring and promotion practices. So, there's lots of things. And of course, we need flexible working arrangements that enable women who might have caring responsibilities to still thrive in the workplace.
So, Jen, what's some of the keys to overcoming these barriers?
Look, I wish it was easy to fix, and I think, there's a lot of goodwill out there. So if it were easy, then hopefully it would have happened by now. But look, I think we need to address these systemic issues. We need to, there shouldn't be a pay gap in this day and age. It's just insane to me that there's still a pay gap. We need to have good career advancement opportunities for women. We need to have more flexible working arrangements. But I think we also need to do more about encouraging girls and women from a really young age. They need to be exposed to STEM and to realise that STEM is the future. So many jobs in the future are going to be STEM jobs. So we need to get them into science, get them into STEM. But then once they're there, we need to make sure we can keep them there. There's got to be support for work-life balance. There's got to be, the sexual harassment that we hear about happening in STEM workplaces is just shocking. So women need to come in, feel safe, feel supported, and be able to do their best work. And then, be visible so that they're providing role modelling for the girls who might come through later. I think there's so many things that we can do.
Yeah, we know that girls' confidence is lower in STEM, this is according to industry dove, than males. So why is it really so important that we combat these stereotypes, parents' advice, what we see in the media, that we really get women involved in STEM?
Yeah, I just think it's so essential. We hear this idea of you can't be what you can't see, right? So if women might imagine that they have a future in STEM, but they don't see anyone around them role modelling that, then it can be really hard to feel confident that you have something to give. I was giving a talk at a school a few weeks ago. I love to go into schools and give talks about what it's like to be a scientist. And this gorgeous little girl in grade 2 came up to me at the end and said, really genuinely, I didn't know that girls could be scientists. That's still happening. It's still happening today, right? So, we've got to have, it's just so essential for the future of the planet that we have a STEM workforce that is diverse, right? The diversity of perspectives and the diversity of ideas, that's where creativity comes from. And the biggest problems in the world, I think, have their answers in STEM. And yet half of the smartest brains in the world belong to women, and potentially, half of those brains aren't being given the opportunities and the support to contribute to solving these really big problems.
Jen, I'm not going to get too political. Most of those problems were caused by men, by the way.
You can say that. You can say that. I
can say that. So, okay, I love your point about schools. So what can schools do right now to increase girls' involvement in STEM?
Plenty. Just providing exposure to STEM really early. Help girls as well as boys to understand that STEM is everywhere. I like to say that everybody is a scientist. Children are inherently curious, and encouraging that curiosity and help girls to understand that means, you are going to be a great scientist if you're asking questions, if you're curious, if you're thinking about the world. And schools can do all sorts of really simple things. You don't need a highly trained scientist in your school to do really fun and engaging science activities. And then you can bring people like me in to role model and show that, yes, women can be in science. and can have children as well. You know, it's not like the only way I managed to have a career in science was because that's all I've done in my life. I've had periods off for maternity leave. I've worked part-time. You know, it's absolutely possible to do it, but you need to role model that. I think that's really important. And I also think it's important to recognise gendered language, to make sure that people aren't unconsciously biasing girls against thinking that STEM belongs to them and that they belong in STEM.
Exactly right, Jen, and you have a very powerful voice. Thank you so much for being such a great role model and, of course, joining us here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
And Greg, as always, it's a pleasure to have you. Such an important chat. It means a lot to us today. But before we go, what are your best Beyond Education tips?
Well, I think it's so empowering, isn't it? And what I like about Inquiry Tracker, we really try to reach out and make sure schools engage and capture those interests before the kids start at the schools. Here are my tips. There do not need to be any barriers to women doing whatever careers they want to try. We need to encourage girls to go into STEM or STEAM and provide a positive environment. And we need to realise that STEM education starts early in school, at the elementary and primary schools, and is reinforced at home. Thanks, Britt.
Greg, such a wonderful discussion, and of course Jen today, really interesting, and of course we know the involvement must be more popular with STEM. As always, a great show presented by our friends at Inquiry Tracker. If you'd like to learn more about how your school can use this amazing admissions software, head over to inquirytracker.net. I'm Britt Coles, we'll be back soon.